Premier, thank you for your time.
Pleasure, Lee.
Queensland says that it will only open the border to New South Wales after its southern neighbour has had 28 days free from community transmission. A lot of Queensland residents might say, well, that's fair enough, we don't want the virus up here.
Well, look, I don't know anywhere on the planet where they keep their economy moving, jobs going and have zero community transmission. In fact, I don't even know countries or states where there's an elimination strategy where the whole place is shut down where you don't have any cases. Look at New Zealand, that's a case in point. So long as the pandemic is with us, there is always that risk. But what is important is whether you're able to manage that risk. And I think New South Wales has demonstrated, notwithstanding the huge pressure on us given what was happening in Victoria and our geographic proximity, that we are managing to control the spread of the virus in a reasonable way. Transmission rates are very low. In fact, transmission rates of unknown cases are very low. Most of the cases we've had today and previous days have been from known sources. The target they're giving us is pretty much unachievable.
Yesterday, the Queensland Premier opened her borders to allow hundreds of AFL officials to head up from Melbourne in coming weeks. Does that set any sort of precedent to allow the residents of northern New South Wales to cross the border for essential reasons such as medical care or compassionate grounds?
Oh, look, I would really hope so. I had a conversation with her yesterday about at least allowing doctors and physicians to come across the border. We had an example of a country hospital on the border town, one of the border towns, where they get a GP for 2 weeks out of 4 every month. But because of the border closure, they haven't been able to get the GP because the GP flies in from Queensland, and then when they're going back home, they can't afford to be in quarantine for 2 weeks. So I suspect the Queensland government's response to having the AFL contingent up there will be, oh, they're doing their quarantine and it's COVID safe. But I guess that's little consolation for people who are just struggling to get medical services, reunite with loved ones, or just carry out basic businesses. Because for those of us that don't live in border towns, we don't understand the concept enough about one community. They don't see the border as any division. They see themselves as one community, and we have to understand that.
On the Ruby Princess debacle, the independent investigation found that the most serious error was the judgment made by the New South Wales Health Department to let people disembark, and that decision led to 900 infections and 28 deaths. None of the people who made those decisions were asked to resign, despite that terrible error of judgment. Do any of the people involved in those decisions currently work on managing coronavirus in New South Wales?
Well, Lee, can I firstly say our condolences to everybody impacted and people who are still going through trauma on that, and in particular the 62 people who got the virus secondary or tertiary because of the people who disembarked. I read the report from cover to cover. Brett Walker, in his recommendations and in his conclusions, found it wasn't a systemic error, but it was human error. And he did not recommend the removal of any staff.
As you said, it's a human error and it was a stuff-up. Shouldn't you be able to now assure members of the public that their safety isn't reliant on the judgment of the people that made those errors?
But I think, Lee, what we've demonstrated in New South Wales is that we have a public health team that is second to none. And a pandemic is never perfect. Mistakes have been made, and I can't guarantee mistakes won't be made again. But what I can guarantee is that our public health network in New South Wales, I would contend, is world best practice. Does that mean perfect? Not by a long shot. But does it mean that as far as our comparison with other parts of the world is concerned, given our population, given our proximity to Victoria with 55 border crossings and the number of cases there, the way that we've managed to suppress the community transmission, I think it's a credit to the public health team. But as I said, it doesn't mean human error won't occur. It doesn't mean, mistakes won't happen again. We'll have good days and bad days during the pandemic. But what's important is to learn from every single mistake that occurs, to learn from every new scenario and then apply that to the future. And I just want to assure the public that I have every confidence in our public health team. I'm extremely proud of them. But it doesn't mean people won't make mistakes, especially if they're looking at something they've never seen before or dealing with a situation they've never had to deal with before. But I can say with confidence we've learned a lot since that time.
Premier, thanks for your time this evening.
Thank you, Lee.
Hi, I'm Lee Sales. Thanks for watching this story. If you'd like to watch more of 7:30's stories, they are on the left of your screen. And tap on the button below to subscribe and get the latest from ABC News.